notes for about 30 seconds.
My writing has gone to pot since I started these treatments. It never was that good. I should confess. And today is the
12th.
The
July
12th?
12th.
yeah, all right.
Room tone. That's what it's called.
What?
Room tone.
Is that it? Does that cover it? Or is there more?
Yeah, if you could just sign all of that.
Oh, more.
Let me make sure. I really want to let you.
Wow, a lot of signing. Printed. Oh, isn't that you? Signature person obtaining?
Yeah, so there's a part where we, yes, this is, that's, yep, you just need to do that, we do that.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was strange that I signed twice.
And then on the next page, if you could just print your name here.
Oh, sure.
Oh, it's, you got
Oh, it's on here.
Yeah, I was just making
Oh,
sure.
oh. On which?
School.
Not
Do you have
behind.
the same? Oh, maybe?
Maybe here.
Yeah. So, right there, if
That
you could
one.
just print your name.
Photo
right
and recording.
Uh-huh. And then,
Geoff, is your last name Grohowski? Grohowski.
Perfect.
I just want to make sure I said it okay.
Perfect.
Good.
It's originally it's supposed to have a C in it, so that might like catch in your throat a little bit. But they dropped it on my dad's papers, so it's not in the name anymore.
and then after you print your name there.
Oh, I write it, letter it in.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have some very cool pieces in here. I love it. I love the blue on the ceiling too.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful.
I like it
Blue
too.
green. Did you do that? Did you do that? The paint
the
with
the teal color?
The teal.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful.
And I'm gradually, I've done the yellow on that wall. I'm gradually removing this fake texture, and restoring the natural plaster surface.
Yeah.
And I'm working my way around. It's a big job.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Something good for winter.
Yeah. Do you laser cut?
Hmm.
Do you laser cut?
Oh, what are you pointing at?
That, the model right
Yeah, I did that when I was studying at MATC.
Nice.
All right.
Alright, and then on the next page, you just letter your name in again, and then write the date next to it.
Okay.
And then write your address, and,
You need all that, the address? I didn't even get that.
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's the same, sheet.
Print it again. Or printed name. Which is it? The printed name would be lettered out, and the signature would be.
They want both.
Huh?
They want both.
They don't care. Okay.
But if
Alright.
you can keep this copy, and then we can keep that copy, so you just have to fill out that one.
Okay.
Let's see, where are we on here now? So we just need it right. We don't need it on that one. We just need it on this one. That one's yours to keep. So this
Oh.
one is the one that we take with us. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, it's a puzzle.
Paper.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's 123, so I'll say 131.
So, if you want to make a note, we're probably about to start. actually doing the interview around like 5 minutes and 15 seconds.
Okay.
And the rest we can fill out if you don't feel like it.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr.
Certainly.
Grohowski. Okay, well, Mr. Grohowski, I'm Stephanie, and this is Tiana. I don't think we did the formal introductions, but that's us.
This is my stuff?
Yeah.
And you'll probably want that back.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. And if for whatever reason down the line you don't want us to use your interview anymore, there's info on there so you can call us and say, lose my stuff and never use it again. But please don't, because
Well, unless this is really terrible and embarrassing what I say. But I hope I'll be a little bit intelligent anyway.
Oh gosh. All right, are we ready to begin?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My name is Stephanie Gieslin, and I'm here recording with Tiana Cooksey, and we're sitting here in the home today of Geoff Grohowski at 2803 North Sherman in the Sherman Park neighborhood. And it is July 12th, 2017, a little before 1:30 p.m. Mr. Grohowski, I know that you've already signed our consent forms, but can I just have you give an oral consent to use your interview?
Certainly. I'm happy to do this, and I hope I do a good job for you.
Oh, I'm sure you will. Thank you so much. All right, Mr. Grohowski, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you just telling us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Okay. I grew up not far from here, but technically not in the Sherman Park neighborhood. It was like the first block north of Capitol on 44th. So that was mostly like post-World War II housing. We had a little Cape Cod, brick Cape Cod. And but my parents and I had roots in the Sherman Park neighborhood, not far from around where I am right now. My great grandfather, who was in the fabricated machinery and custom machinery, and had a bunch of patents in his name. Built a little home at 46th and Clark, which is pretty much right behind the high school. And I didn't really know my great-grandfather. He was gone by the time I got here, but I knew my great-grandmother a little bit when I was young. And I know my mom first, I don't know her first address offhand, but eventually she ended up living on 51st Boulevard, as did my great aunt and great uncle. And so she more or less grew up in Sherman Park, along with her siblings, her brother and her sister. And she started out going to, when she lived, what was it, on like a little bit east of here. At first, she went to like 38th Street School, and then later when they moved to 51st Boulevard, she went to Sherman School on 51st Boulevard, just near the hospital. So there's roots here. She played in Sherman Park. They would go further up the line to Washington Park, where the original county zoo was. It was very picturesque. It was more old-fashioned than what we have now, not so much concrete, because I can remember it. And if you look at pictures of it, it's very sweet. And I think that was in the southwest, the southwest corner of the park, which is some of it is kind of truncated by that stupid freeway. So they wouldn't allow that today, but they allowed a strip of Washington Park to be used for freeway. And so that's when in the 60s the new zoo was open and everything was moved over there. So my background. So I grew up, as I say, north of Capitol. Consequently, I didn't go to school at Washington High School. I went to what was then called Custer High School, which is now I think Obama. And but I did go. I was in a weird place in the line right on the border. So, but I ended up going to what was called Peckham Junior High, which became Jackie Robinson, and is now converted to a retirement home. And they did a beautiful job with it, by the way. But yeah, and when we went in there, before they began work, I went in there with the alderman, the local alderman, and a few other people just to get a look at it. And we wandered into the old library, and there were like boxes and boxes, like shoe boxes, and they were all had students' names in them. And we pulled out a little card with my permanent record on it. Yeah, it was weird. After I don't know how many years. So anyways, and it wasn't very impressive either. But anyways, yeah, I studied art at UWM. Later on, I studied architectural technology at MHUC, as I needed a better way to bring in some money. And right now I still have a LLC, but I don't do a lot of work. So I'm kind of semi-retired. And so my passion is art and design. It is, and I try to keep it around me. And that's probably, besides the family links, that's probably what drew me to my particular location. When I was a kid, we'd go downtown on the bus, along Sherman, and I'd always see these grand houses, these beautiful houses, and my mom would always comment on how she thought it was really a beautiful neighborhood too. Grant Boulevard, which is 1 block to the east, and Sherman both. So I happened to be working, actually at that time I was working for Discovery World Museum, and they had me out picking up some stuff from certain vendors, and I happened to cruise by here and saw the for sale sign, and I said, oh, I wonder if I could what I could do with that. And so I called in, and it was doable. So it was nice, and it's been a while. I've done a lot of work, and it's still a lot of work to do yet. There's always maintenance, and yeah. At first, it was kind of a little bit of like the Wild West. It was there was like a crack epidemic going on. So there's some pretty wild behavior. And after I'd bought, I'd heard, that people were assaulted and stuff at bus stops. But that was crazy for a while, and people were driving like crazy. They still drive like crazy, but there's some like shooting in the daylight and stuff like that. But it went away. It got more mild as time goes on, and as I sit right now, it feels pretty good. And the whole I was just observing, in recent days how just the look of the people on the street has changed. There are, you're seeing people or young people as much in gangsta outfits or, their pants falling down. Now you're seeing, young people in slacks and t-shirts and polo shirts, which I won't even wear polo shirts, but and young women looking really beautifully groomed. And I don't know, maybe some of this is inspired by recent media. I don't know, but everybody looks good now, unlike like earlier. And you're seeing more people walking dogs. Sometimes a pair of people, sometimes a pair of dogs, and you're seeing more people riding bikes. Although the facilities aren't good, they end up, a lot of them are on the sidewalk, riding the wrong direction. But there's a lot more people on bikes, and I'm glad to see that too. And actually, I'm seeing a few more white people. For a while, it was the trend was, black, and this was becoming a middle class black street, which is fine. I mean, I'm glad, and the people that bought in, live here, and they have pride, because it's like a certain kind of arrival, having arrived at a quality street like this, and having neighbors that you like. And I have neighbors that I like. Maybe at first I had a rough time with one lady, but now we're great. And I have a fellow that's across the street that just bought in 2 years ago, moved from Minnesota, and bought the house with her sister. It's a giant duplex, and it was pretty much original inside, except it was really shabby and stinky because the guy that lived there for 40 years was a smoker, and didn't do a lot. But it was original, and so they were able to spruce it up and put in money into the plumbing and into the heating, the electrical, and if every which way. And his sister is really big on plantings. So if you look out there, there's a lot of beautiful plantings. She's out there all the time, and they're great people. And I haven't been well lately, and he'll come over and just mow my lawn. and he's done it I don't know how many times now. And on the other side, the lady on the other side, Linda, she has, they have better access to my backyard because it's fenced toward the street, and they've come over from their side and mowed the other part of it. And so they're great people, and I'm all the time happier to be here, I think. And if I can go further, my love of the architecture, it's there was in the 20s when most of this was built, although it goes back to the teens if you go farther south. There was a predominance of German architects in Milwaukee. I mean, it was huge. You could look at the city directory and find 90 architects working at one time. I don't know how they did it, but yeah. And so they brought their influences from Europe, and they also some of them that were more progressive would stay in touch with the newer trends in Germany, and so you'd see a little of that here. And even this house, people look at it from outside and you think, oh, well, it's got like prairie lines to it and stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. And it looks sort of arts and crafts inside. But to me, it looks, it probably owes more to German and Austrian architects than to Frank Lloyd Wright. It's almost like, what's his name now? Luce, Adolf Luce. I think of him when I look at that glass and some of the proportions. It's not as ground hugging if you look at the facade as Wright might be, and it has more like monumentality to it. It looks solid, has a solidity. you see this a variety of styles on this street, almost like a catalog. And the same on Grant Boulevard. The houses over there, same quality. Some of them are a little bit more modest scale, and pretty much these streets developed in parallel. Sherman Boulevard was official city boulevard from the get-go, per the plans of Olmsted and the pioneering park people in the city. It was built as a link from Washington Park to Sherman Park first now, and you look at it now, you could go all the way to McGovern Park and the state park. What's that called now? I can't think of it. State park. That isn't far, across Silver Spring. So it again maintains that link that was intended. And there are other places in town where there's linking, like from Riverside Park to Lake Park, this Boulevard, other places too. So it followed the city plan. It was official boulevard from get-go. The Grant Boulevard, built in parallel, was a developer's built boulevard. It was set up and arranged by the developers to be in the form it's in, and but later on it got official city designation as well. So it's Grant Boulevard. Oh yeah, and in the 90s, when I was here, I had the idea that Grant Boulevard was already a city designated historic district, and also state and national. And I thought, but this street is impressive. Why shouldn't this street be? And the answer, of course, is political, partly. You have to get a buy-in from enough people so that the aldermen will support it. Ordinarily, you don't have to get permission from owners ordinarily, but if everybody got up and hollered at the aldermen and said no way, that would be a problem. But it was, I guess, maybe at the right time that people were seeing that it needed protection, and so I wrote up the application, and eventually we got the support we needed. It was difficult at certain points. Some people that resisted, like the church down the street here was resisted at some point, but eventually we got an agreement. And it became a local historic district. And maybe 10 years ago, what was it, maybe 2002, 2003, then I thought, okay, people are here, they should be able to, access the tax credits that are available for people that are in National Register districts. So I went to work on that. That's a different kind of a task. So what we got was a matching grant from the state. What is it called? A subgrant, and that enabled us to hire a consultant that would survey everything and do up the application, and you have to present that to certain boards with the National Park Service and so on. So the whole thing would have been maybe too much for a local yokel to do. So we passed it to him, and it was successful. And so now we have both designations, just like Grant does. And the length of the district, both local and national, is from Lloyd Street at Washington Park to it's close to Fond du Lac. I think Keefe Avenue is the last one that goes through east-west. So that's the extent of it. And it's like 200 some properties. So I don't know what to say now.
And so, just to clarify, so as a result of that being listed as a local historic district and that endeavor with the matching grant and the consultant that came in and surveyed, you were able to have the people who live on the street receive tax credits for
Right.
living? Okay.
And they do. It's, you know, we have to educate them sometimes because you get newer residents and they don't know about it, or people forget that it's possible, and suddenly they need a roof and they don't think about necessarily that. But you know, a big roof like got on a lot of these houses can be, you know, 30 grand or so. So it once they know that they can get 25% of that back, they make sure to do it. And when my new neighbor friend across the street moved in, I made sure he understood how the whole process worked, and he used it a lot.
Mm-hmm. You had mentioned that your passion is in art and design, but then after MATC, you went on to get an education in architecture.
MATC is where I got my education.
It's where you did the architecture.
It's architectural technology, which isn't quite as high flowing as UWM's degree. It tends to be more hands-on technical, and but you learn a lot, and it's pretty good.
Did you find that the architectural technical that you studied fulfilled your love for art and design? Did the two go well together for you?
Well, they went well, but I would have liked even more. I think when I was young, I really would have liked to be an architect or an industrial designer. But you know, I didn't get a lot of support with that. Some people said, "Oh, you don't know, you're not good enough at math, and you don't have good enough." And you know, hey, you know, now I can say, "Hey, there are engineers for that part." But nonetheless, I never, you know, even though my income was from architectural drafting, which isn't nearly as creative, but it's still fun. I always, you know, maintained my link with design, and you know, it's just, I kept it as a special passion, that something that enlarges my life and enhances it. I think because it's, you know, try and surround yourself with beauty, and you work to protect beauty, like with the street and so on. I think that really it enhances your life, and I think there's importance to that.
I was really touched by what you said about the neighborliness of some of the people on your block around you and helping you with maintaining your yard from two different neighbors. That was really beautiful. And one thing that I've noticed when walking around the Sherman Park neighborhood is so many beautifully, meticulously kept gardens, even in some of the areas where the homes have maybe fallen a little bit into disrepair. Right. People seem to really care about maintaining a beautiful yard.
It's true.
And I wonder if that has ties to neighborliness and wanting to keep the street beautiful for your neighbors. Do you have any insight into that?
No, I think I agree, and there have been streets that have gone, you know, blocks at least, that have gone in together on projects that, you know, that brought in landscaping, enhanced landscaping for their particular block, and you know, they've gone to get grants or you know, there were programs for a while. I don't know if they're out there anymore. That you know, neighborhood beautification grants, and people were taking advantage of that. And it does. I think it has to do with the bonding of the neighbors. And one of the issues around here is that there's a variability. Some blocks are like very tight and stable, and people interact and support one another. And then there are other blocks that are like people that are transient, and there it's more difficult to maintain that. But with my work with Sherman Park Community Association, one of our thrusts is housing, and we do a annual housing survey every year of every building, every home in Sherman Park, and it's got checkoffs. This needs paint. This needs roof. This needs whatnot, and so we've done that for not myself, but it goes back like probably 40 years doing this, and so what they'll do is they'll do the survey, then they'll write letters to people that have particularly outstanding problems, and it'll be a gentler letter for people that are owner occupied, and we'll try and steer them to some programs that can help, and we're a little bit more harsh and firm with those people that are absentees. And toward the fall, we do a resurvey, and we'll find that some properties that people have moved ahead and done the work that needed to be done. And again, these tend to be homeowners, but sometimes absentees get to a point where, yeah, we got to do something here. But those that fail to do anything at all, we put together a file, and it goes to the Department of Neighborhood Services for possible enforcement. So we do that every year. But one of the thrusts, and I particularly stressed this, we had a strategic planning, retreat. And I wasn't able to make it because I wasn't feeling well. But the point I stressed remotely was that what we need, part of our effort has to be on maintaining the character of our streetscape, and not letting it go or being altered, or many of the streets, you look down them and is like the old days when there were the big elm trees. Now these trees that have been that replaced the elms are becoming more mature, and you see a beautiful corridor of trees and houses that are distinct. They're not, most of them, cranked out by developers wholesale, but they have character, and if we can work to keep the look of the streets and the look of the individual houses, particularly when they're they have outstanding qualities. I think that's a good mission for us.
You mentioned that with the SPCA, the Sherman Park Community Association, that when you go around to do the surveys, you intend to be harsher with absentee landlords than with people who are owning their homes. Can you tell me a little bit more about the work that SPCA does, and also about your thoughts on the impact absentee landlords have on the Sherman Park neighborhood?
Oh, it varies a lot per the landlord. There are responsible landlords out there, and you have to give them credit. They do what they can do. Some of them are small, and they maybe have their own home nearby, and they have invested in a property, and it brings them a little income, and they try to keep it up. But then there are these people that are like they're like almost like small scale corporate groups that buy up properties and exploit them and exploit their tenants rather than they overcharge the rents. People sometimes have nowhere else to go to consider. They let the maintenance go. They don't respond to the complaints of the tenants. And of course, the state law has now been weakened by our fabulous governor. But there are still certain protections that more likely from the city. And again, if we can do our part to keep the pressure on them, so that they bank repairs and don't let things go too far through such things as the housing survey, it's a good thing. And aside from just the physical structures, we as an organization, try to be supportive of the individuals in the neighborhood that have to face problems with their landlords, or have problems if it's their own home finding money, or issues where there's people that are barraged by loud music, or constantly, or have people that throw trash in their yard, or they're adjacent to a yard that's horrible. We try to support those people, and where we can get funds, we have to operate on funds too. So we're sometimes strapped ourselves with what we can do, but we try, and we're always a phone call away, or the people can stop in, and it's a great group. The group is almost 50 years old, for goodness sakes. They originally started during the open housing struggles, where there was blockbusting, where unscrupulous realtors would try to go into a block and say, "Hey, there's African American, move in 2 doors down. Maybe it's a good time for you to sell right now," and get people to unload their houses cheaply, and that eventually was not was made illegal, for one, and for the people that were part of Sherman Park and the organization, they had a strategy where they had not for sale signs, that put up not for sale signs, and there's a flip side to the for sale signs. So I wasn't around at that time though, but the other thing that they were working on was stopping the freeways, because the freeways were eating up the city. And of course, you can see, where it stops right at Sherman Boulevard. One side is gone, and there was that whole corridor to the east that was leveled and pretty much killed the businesses on North Avenue that thrived on the people that lived there. But that's ancient history. But they were part of the thrust that said, enough already. Stop here. No more. We've had enough of this. So there are books out on Sherman Park and on those efforts. Mr. Keenan is one. I can't remember his first name, but he's still out there as an activist. But he wrote a book on Sherman Park and on those history of the early days. So I don't know if I have an answer to your question or just rambled.
Yeah. Can you tell me, back up and tell me more about those not for sale signs? What was that about?
Well, I mean, because the blockbusters were coming through, encouraging people to sell their homes cheaply, because the fear, inserting fear into the block, crazy fear, of course, but it was effective for them in some cases, and so this was just a way of countering that. Just, like a row of for sale signs is a lot more, I think, destructive or harmful than a block full of people that say, no, we're here, we're staying here. Nobody's going to force us out of our homes. So
I love that. That's like a group of picketers with picket signs,
yes.
with houses as protesters.
Yeah, right. It is cool. It is cool. But that was before my time, so I can't take any credit at all for that.
Sure. Well, you did mention that, I believe you did, that since you've lived here, you have seen or you have observed a bit of a demographic shift, that things are starting to change. You said that primarily it was the demographic was almost all black, and now you're starting to see more white people move into the area.
I don't know. It's just it may be just what I'm seeing right now. I mean, it's just the trend has been more middle class black, and that's just fine. I mean, if again, it's a point of pride. It's somewhere that black entrepreneurs can call their own and call their own with pride, and feel like they've arrived, and that's, I think, it's all to the credit, and I'm happy to live here with them if they'll keep me. So I like it, and I have no problem with that. It's just the observation I made was just kind of idiosyncratic. It was just in these last few weeks I had more time to sit on the porch just because I wasn't feeling well, and it's just particularly with the dress of the young people, I'm seeing it change, and it looks really cool. I like it.
I guess that when I start to see a predominantly black neighborhood start having a shifting demographic and more white people moving into the area, part of me, there's the duality. Is this becoming a more healthy, is it healthy diversity, or
yes.
is it displacement through gentrification?
Yeah.
And I wonder if you
That's
have
a
any
good
ideas
argument.
about which way it's going and how you can steer it towards the better, like unity and diversification rather than displacement.
Yeah, and I don't see the displacement. Like I said, it's like, just idiosyncratic, and I think it's very solidly black. I mean, we're white minority for sure, and I see no reason that's going to change, except it's like just better to have a mix. It's better for everybody to have a mix, and actually, one of the arguments for gentrification, if you want to argue, is that it tends to bring in, maybe some people are struggling a little more because costs go up, but it also brings in more city services. It tends to bring in the things that people need to improve their neighborhood and to improve their condition. So on the face of it, it can look like a bad thing, but actually there are some benefits.
Absolutely. That was very insightful. Thank you. I guess, do you want to tell me a little bit about your first memories of Sherman Park?
My first, what?
Your first memories of Sherman Park.
Well, you mean going way back?
Yeah,
way back.
Is there anything that stands out in your mind as?
Yeah. Actually, again, it's like, well, either my parents driving me around or whatever. There was always, you would go downtown from here, except my dad he had another way, Hopkins and then 15th, 16th Street or whatever, to go downtown when there wasn't a freeway. But I myself, I mean, it's like, other than my mom saying what a beautiful area it was, and how friends of hers lived here, and blah 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 blah. Other than that, it's just like I like to go downtown to the library, and or younger yet, my grandma, spent time with us, and she'd either take us downtown, which was a lot more stimulated than it seems now, it was going downtown was really an adventure, a treat. And of course, again, the other end of the boulevard, it ends at the Washington Park, and my grandma would take us there. She'd take us to the zoo there, and that's just out of Sherman Park, but always just passing through here, either on the bus or, well, with grandma, it was on the bus too because she didn't have a car, but just seeing it from the bus, it was like, oh man, that's nice. And actually, I picked up on this very house as something that I really liked when I was a kid. It has some, things that need to be restored that are missing. It had rafter tails, exposed rafter tails, all the way around, 4 sides of the roof, which is a hipped roof, and the porch as well. So it had these. I count like 90 some rafter tails that I would like to replace because it looked, as they came out under the eaves, it was like on 4 sides, and on the porch it took on in some ways an Asian feel, like a pagoda like, even though it was something else, and I just really liked it, and I'd like to go back to that, but expensive. Yeah.
What was so you spotted this house as a child, even before you ever set foot in it, but can you tell me about what your first impressions were of the house the first time? What do you remember from the first time you set foot in this home?
Well, of course, I was impressed with the woodwork, the leaded glass, and just the size of the rooms. The size of the rooms are generous, and the bedroom, the master bedroom upstairs is actually the same size as this room. There's a couple of closets either side of the chimney. But it's a big room. But another thing that befell this house with the original owners in the right after the war, the Second World War, there was a tremendous housing shortage, and you go northwest, you see a lot of little ticky-tacky cottagey things that built for GIs and their new brides, and so the original owners, they were already they were older, and the kids were gone, and they thought, oh, we can turn this into a duplex. So they made an attempt to do that, and it's a quality attempt, but except that it's a stupid attempt to do it for the money they put into it. The original main staircase opened right into the side of the dining room and up, and now that's blocked, and instead it leads to where there would have been a closet through that, and then there's another entrance on this side, and also behind the buffet and to the right there were double doors there that led into what I think was a breakfast room. So all the kitchen prep, food prep was in the kitchen proper, and then you'd have its breakfast room. It was like a sunroom, but they felt that they could use that as their bedroom, and it's got like windows all around. It's got a teeny tiny little closet that more or less takes up the space where the double doors would have been, and to the depth of the buffet, and it's just not. I mean, maybe they thought they could put up with that, but for another generation, no. So we haven't really changed anything back, but I mean, there was a kitchen created in the 4th bedroom. Kitchen we used as a family room, and now I'm turning it into a studio because I'm doing more drawing and painting again. And so that's, it's got some utilitarian value because it's got a sink and that stuff. But then there are 3 other bedrooms as well. So So I haven't really changed it back. The work that they did was good work. It wasn't sloppy, didn't hack things up. But, in some ways I'd prefer to have it the way it was originally, but in some ways this works too.
Do you know if they ever ended up having someone move into the upper level?
Oh, sure they did.
Oh, they did.
They did. Yeah, for years actually. And then the second owners, I'm only the third owner. The second owners had, it was multi-generational. I think the mother lived downstairs, and the family lived above. Yeah, and then I think later on, after the mother passed, they tended to use more of the space themselves. Except I believe they had like exchange students, foreign exchange students, and they'd let them have certain areas of the building and that were more private from themselves. So
that's really interesting to me that you said that they used the duplex kind of multi-generationally, because I don't know if it's I've been very limited in the number of homes that I've been able to go into here, but I believe 2 of the duplexes that we've been in that were owned, inhabited by the owner, they had their grown child living in the upper level.
Yeah.
And now you've also said that 2 sisters bought...
A sister and a brother.
Oh, a sister and a brother bought a duplex there. Do you think that that's is that like a Sherman Park thing, or is that an everywhere thing? Or
that was part of the, I think the part of the original idea of the of having a duplex, is that family, extended family could be in the same building, have their privacy, and the other argument was that it would be on-site rental property that would help the owner carry the weight of his own mortgage. They were helping to pay his mortgage. So there's 2 functions that were, and I don't know. I think some of that has been forgotten, and it's still a useful idea. But more of it is, just people that don't know each other, and it's renting a space, and that's kind of unfortunate, in a way. So, and it leads also to absentee ownership and absentee neglect. But again, the place, the neighbors to my north, again, there's a woman is downstairs and her grown son upstairs. So, and before that, when his son was younger, the mother and the siblings lived upstairs. I think there was a daughter too, and her mother lived downstairs. So it's still used as intended, pretty much, in two instances.
One of our classmates is really interested in how, over time, uses of certain spaces in these older homes have changed as the way people live and technology has changed. And you mentioned that a space that was originally a bedroom and then the second-story kitchen is now, you're using it as your home workspace.
Right.
In the span of time that you've lived in this home, has the area that you tend to use for work at home changed as your interest changed? Or can you tell us about that?
Wow.
How you make work at home?
It's difficult for me to speak about how other people are living in their private space.
But just you.
But I know that for here, the breakfast room thing, the sunroom, breakfast room, it became a bedroom, is now pretty much like my office and computers and stuff in there. So that's another change, another transition. But I will note that there are certain people on this street that have taken their duplexes and converted them into single family, even a more expansive single family. So, and I know a couple of them in particular. One actually is where one of the aldermen lives, Russell Stamper. That was divided up into at least 2 and sometimes 3 spaces, from what I understand. But it was converted back and improved on, and he bought it eventually.
Do you have a basement in your home?
Oh yeah. In fact, the basement. This house is built like a rock. It's the basement is poured concrete, and most houses will have a steel beam that'll go down the center, or a timber, or whatever it is. This has 2 steel beams going this way and that way, and the exterior walls have all 2x6s in them instead of 2x4s, and those walls that sit on those beams also have 2x6s in them, and so it's solid as heck. But I think my guess just is that a lot of that is to carry the weight of that tile roof. Mm. Yeah, it's a lot of weight. Those are, each tile is like 5.5 pounds, and there's a lot of them. It gets heavy.
Those tile roofs are beautiful, though. I've seen a few of those, and they're really nice.
Yeah, and it's the original roof.
Can you tell us about what do you use your basement space for? What the basement is like the heart of the house, underneath the house. The
dungeon is.
Yeah.
No, the laundry is a laundry, and actually. It's this house had like a lot of houses around here had finished basement and plaster all over and everything, and this house had one room that had a terrazzo floor, and the shape of that one has changed a little because when they divided, top and bottom, they gave the tenants their special space. So there's been a couple of walls moved. But there's actually a bar down there that probably sprung up in the 20s, in that room with the terrazzo floor. And of course, you got to remember that was the middle of Prohibition, and you wanted to entertain in a certain manner. You did what you had to do. So there's a bar, and it's got like an ice box and a tapper. So I've never used it, but it's there. So other than that, there's the boiler room. Boiler room tends to have be technical, and there are tools in there, and supplies. But I have to confess that the place is a mess, and I've got stuff all over the place. Got to be organized, and a lot of it probably tossed. But there's the fragments that have been part of different projects or repairs that have been either finished or maybe never got totally finished, but the stuff I need to finish it is in a box somewhere down there. So it's utilitarian for me anyway.
The German-Austrian architectural style that drew you to this house and the neighborhood, is that something that you find to be specific to Sherman Park, or are there other neighborhoods around Milwaukee around the same age where you see as much of it?
I think you probably see it around, but it's just like more focused here because, you even see it on the east side. You can pick out certain houses on the east side that have this, like this German Renaissance revival, that was like just after the turn of the century. I think that these guys that were connected with Europe, it brought the sensibility in, a lot of that went away with World War One because there was this was a very German city, and there was after that there was a lot of denial about being German, and a lot of the things that were in your face were no longer in your face. But yeah, there are certain that the old Harnischfeger mansion that's near 35th in Wisconsin. That's it's like one of the last mansions that was built on Wisconsin Avenue, but that's in the German Renaissance Revival style, very characteristic. And there's a couple on Grant that have that look, and they turn up in certain places around the city. I think there's on Terrace Avenue. There's one that's very like that, not too far from where the Frank Lloyd Wright Bach house is. So they got around, but I mean, there were a bunch of those Germans, and of course the profession, as such, originated with the Germans. It's an organized profession. Although we know there were known architects all the way back to like Byzantine times.
So, your love of historic architecture has contributed, I think, to your work with the Milwaukee Preservation Alliance,
which
is awesome. Can you tell us about the Preservation Alliance and your work with it and what it does?
Well, let's see. What can I say about them? They're a nonprofit organization. They have been staying on top of. Well, one of the things there was a chance of the local ordinance being changed, and they stayed on top of that until the result that came out was actually more of a positive than it could have been. It could have weakened it a lot if they hadn't stayed on top of it. The other thing that they've been very active in is the old soldiers' home, which was pretty much at risk. The local branch of the VA, just thought of it as a kind of an anomaly. They didn't want to put any budget into it or anything, and so we and other interested parties worked very hard in getting that actually made into a National Historic Landmark, which is big. It's like the Washington Monument is National Historic Landmark. So there it is, and we worked on trying to get there was a law that was passed that how private developers could be used to renovate buildings like that as long as they benefited veterans. And so that we were successful in helping that move along but as it sits, I mean, it's the law. Once it's created, the law is created. Rules have to be the responsible agency has to create rules for how this is supposed to operate, and that took a little while again. But finally, and by the way, Gwen Moore was very helpful with this. But eventually, the rules were worked out, and we put out, I don't know if it was we exactly, but a group put out requests for proposals, and so different restoration developers were able to propose what they would be willing to do. And let's see. And right now, there's a group, if I can think of their names, I would like to give them credit, but my mind is blank right now. There's a group that's taking on restoration of at least 6 of the buildings at this point, including the large old main with the tower. and so those are going to be restored correctly, but adapted for housing for veterans and veteran services as well. So then that's happening. I mean, you can pretty soon you'll start to see action down there, I think, and that's really interesting because that particular location is like there were like three locations, soldiers' homes that were created after the Civil War that President Lincoln, put his stamp on. I think he probably was dead before it got started, but there are three major locations in the country, and this is the most intact one that's remaining intact. There was a group of women that in post-Civil War times that came together and was able to pull the real estate together to have this happen. This was a women's group that made this, made it possible for this thing to be created there. So that's really big. Other than that, we try and keep on top of what's at risk in town and make sure the word gets out. Right now, we're working on the domes. There are certain parties that would like to see it just go away and build something new. But they're important. They're important both technically. They have technical qualities that were unique at the time, and also they have this distinctive mid-century modern look that's very much appreciated by people nowadays. So we've been working with community groups on that and kind of rallying the cause, and it's still in process. It's still going on, but it's looking better than it might have for a while. So that when we try and stay on top of buildings at risk and do what we can, as well as just encouraging, proactive designations where something's important, but it's not necessarily at risk right now. But we try to stay up on top of things, and we've got a advocacy committee now that's likely to do more of the hands-on part of that, as well as our board. That first makes policy and steers the organization. So that's Milwaukee Preservation Alliance. It's a good group.
Yeah.
Good group.
That sounds great. It sounds like they do wonderful work. I'm very interested in that. I guess I want to ask you, if there was a family who was thinking about buying a home in Sherman Park, but looking in other places too, what would you, if you had a chance to speak to that family, what would you want to tell them about Sherman Park that might swing their decision to move here?
Mm-hmm. Well, number one in my mind is you can get a better house here, better quality for the much more reasonable place than for that level anywhere else in town. And if you want to be it's a little bit of like being a little bit of an urban pioneer. Yeah, there are issues, and but there are paybacks, and people in Sherman Park that I know of are very dedicated people, dedicated to the neighborhood, and dedicated to doing what needs to be done. And we have tried to support more and more things that go on, like in Sherman Park for kids and so on. A lot of kids for a while were kind of wandering, and they had nowhere else to go. They needed services, and they needed things to keep them occupied and entertained, and even with an education dimension. And so we've been supporting, groups to come in and do that and working with them. And in some cases, we've gotten, grants for them if they're not a tax exempt organization themselves. So yeah, we have a mind for the. Oh wait, I'm not talking about what would bring people here or how I would encourage them. I would encourage them, because you can do good here as well as enjoying a beautiful house at a decent price. I've in fact I had a friend that lives on the east side in a beautiful duplex upper, and the place was being sold, and she's afraid of being priced out of her apartment. So I brought her down here just with my weak legs at the time, up and down Grand Boulevard, just to give her kind of an architectural tour from what I knew. And there have been various tours around here with Historic Milwaukee, a couple of them. And of course, they use these booklets for reference for the names of the architects and stuff where they're known. I was a long shot whether she'd want to jump in, but I wanted her to know what's there. I think she's probably used to a more walkable neighborhood where there, more of the services she wants nearby, grocery and, everything else that, we do have our interesting cafes, and we do have several groceries, but they're kind of scattered, so it's not real terribly walkable. But I still try to encourage her, and in fact, now she says she may be able to stay where she is, but she says she would also like to bring somebody here, and that she wants me to give another tour to her. So you never know, there might be another couple of people that end up biting on it. It may be of more interest. So it's getting the word out.
That's wonderful. Do you have any hopes? What's your personal vision for Sherman Park moving forward? What direction would you like to see it move in? If you have any ideas for the future of Sherman Park.
Well, I don't know how visionary I am, but I want it to thrive on its diversity, and I want to see more businesses come in that enhance that diversity and provide, entertainment and other resources, shops and so on and restaurants, so on that would make people feel even more at home here. Make them feel like they want to stay put right here, and everything that they need is right here. That's what I would want to see, is that it, get our commercial streets revitalized, get them to a point where they are attractions, where people want to be near them and can find the things that they need there, whether they be in an entertainment level or just on a practical level. That would be what I'd want to see. I mean, you look at places like Bayview, you look at River West, and they're full of these little creative little niches that people put together, and we've got better housing than either one of them, and if you look at statistics, the crime is not that great in either one of those places. I mean, compared to Sherman Park, it's just like pretty much apples and oranges, close to. So if that's an issue, it shouldn't be.
Absolutely, yeah.
So have I sold you?
Yeah.
Are you coming?
I'm sold. Tiana, did you have any questions that you wanted to add?
The only thing that I could think of, you talked about this being a historic district. in there with tax credits available. Could you just explain how that worked?
Okay. Well, the tax credits come out of a program, housing tax credits at least, are a federal program. They come out of, where do they come out of exactly? Well, of course, the National Park Service is the group that administers the National Register, and they have all the data. They have all the. It's their baby, but it's also served through the state. The arm of it is that reaches the state is the state SHPO. It's called the SHPO. What is it? It means like. But it's with us. It's housed in the Wisconsin Historical Society. They have a division of historic preservation, and they are the ones that would that actually certify a project. Like if you're going to make a change to your house or a restoration move or whatever, they first of all, they determine whether your house is indeed historic, whether it has merit, and usually if it's in a historic district already, there's no question. But then they are the people that you would submit an application. If you want tax credits, you have to apply beforehand. You can't be an afterthought. You have to provide a plan for them. Pre-work photographs of everything, and then if they approve, they give you a go-ahead, and once you get through with it, your project, and you can gang together a whole bunch of projects if you want over a 5-year period, and once you're done with that, you have everything documented, photographed, and you provide that back to them, and they certify that the project has been done properly, and then the paperwork goes to I believe it's the state revenue, Department of Revenue, that makes it possible for you to get your money.
Do they pay for the whole thing, or they just reimburse like a portion of it?
Oh, they pay for 25% of the work,
Okay.
the approved. They always say approved work,
Okay.
so that people don't jump ahead. So 25% is, if you're spending $30,000, it's a nice chunk.
Yeah, definitely, especially if you were about to do it anyway. Well, that's the only question I had that I was curious about still.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Grohowski, that I think wraps up most of my questions that I had prepared for you, but I want to give you time if you have anything that you'd like to add, anything that's important to you about the area or the architecture in general.
All I can say is it feels good to be in the middle of it, and it looks good. I just like to look at the street on the other side, and that's on this in these 2 blocks here, at least. All the houses are duplexes, except for this one on the corner, which is often different on a corner, but they're high-end duplexes. So but I love looking across the street at the other houses too, because there's also one's different from the other, and really an interesting collection of interesting houses. So that's just my pleasure.
Yeah, that's great. An interesting collection of interesting houses
Yeah.
in a neighborhood with an interesting collection of interesting people. Because
Amen.
many of them have been very interesting.
Amen.
That should be Sherman Park's slogan.
It's a good one. We should get it copyrighted.
All right. Well, unless you have anything else to add, it's we're gonna wrap up, I think.
Okay.
Again, we've been speaking with Geoff Grohowski here at his home on the corner.
Who ran off at his mouse? He ran off and ran on with his mouse.
Oh gosh, no, you've been wonderful. Thank you so
Okay.
much. I love it because it means you're doing all the work and I don't have to do. I just get to listen.
Well,
to
as long as I hit the points that you needed to hit.
Absolutely, you did, and it's been very interesting and wonderful
Good,
talking
good.
with you today. Thank you so much for letting us into your home. And
Oh no, my pleasure to have you. And of course, if there's a gap, if there's something you need to have another word with me about or follow up on, you're more than welcome.
well, thank you so much, and we really appreciate you taking the time. It was wonderful of you to do that.
No problem.
So again, I'm Stephanie Giesland talking with Geoff Grohowski here with Tiana Cooksey recording at 2803 North Sherman Boulevard in Sherman Park. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.